I would like to talk about suicide, not because of any crisis in my own life, nor because I have any reason for suicide, but because the subject is bound to come up when one sees the tragedy of old age, the tragedy of physical disintegration, the breaking up of the body, and the loss of real life in people when this happens. Is there any reason to prolong life when one reaches that state? Would it not perhaps be an act of intelligence to recognize when the usefulness of life is over? If it was intelligence that prompted you to end life, that very intelligence would have forbidden your body to deteriorate ahead of time. We should go into this rather deeply. There are several things involved in it. The deterioration of the body, the senility of the mind, and the utter incapacity that breeds resistance. We abuse the body endlessly, through habit, taste, and negligence. Taste dictates, and the pleasure of it controls and shapes the activity of the organism. When this takes place, the natural intelligence of the body is destroyed. In magazines, one sees a great variety of food appealing to your pleasures of taste, not to what is beneficial for the body. So from youth onwards, you gradually deaden and destroy the instrument which should be highly sensitive, active, functioning like a perfect machine. Then there is the mind, which for 20, 30 or 80 years has lived in constant battle and resistance. It knows only contradiction and conflict, emotional or intellectual. Every form of conflict is not only a distortion, but brings with it destruction. These, then, are some of the basic inner and outer factors of deterioration, the perpetually self-centered activity with its isolating processes. Naturally, there is the physical wearing out of the body as well as the unnatural wearing out. The body loses its capacity and memories, and senility gradually takes over. Should not such a person commit suicide, take a pill that will put him out? Who is asking the question? The senile, or those who are watching the senility with sorrow, with despair and fear of their own deterioration? Will the doctors allow mercy killing? Will the doctors or the government permit the patient to commit suicide? The question is whether one has the right to take one's own life, not only when one is senile or has become aware of the approach of senility, but whether it is morally right to commit suicide at any time. Can an intelligent man commit suicide? Suicide comes, after all, either from complete despair brought about through deep frustration, or from unsolvable fear, or from the awareness of the lack of meaning of a certain way of living. Does intelligence allow any form of suicide? Obviously not. Is it intelligence to allow the body to deteriorate through habit, indulgence, through the cultivation of taste, pleasure, and so on? Is that intelligence? Is that the action of intelligence? Please become aware of the destructive nature of the way we live and put an end to it immediately, not at some future date. The act of immediacy in front of danger is an act of sanity, of intelligence, and the postponement as well the pursuit of pleasure indicate lack of intelligence. Don't you see that this isolating process of thought with its self-centered activity is a form of suicide? Isolation is suicide, whether it is the isolation of a nation, of a religious organization, of a family, or a community. You are already caught in the trap which will ultimately lead to suicide. To escape from facing facts, from facing what is, this escape is a form of suicide. Suicide is an act which obviously means you have come to a point where you are so completely isolated that you don't see any way out. Is there in life an occurrence, a relationship, an incident from which you cannot step aside? Why do you insist that suicide is the only way out? If I have cancer and it is going to finish me, and the doctor says, well, my friend, you have to live with it. What am I to do? Commit suicide? Life has brought you great happiness, beauty. Life has brought you great benefits, and you went with it. Equally, when you were unhappy, you went with it, which is part of intelligence. Now you come to terminal cancer and you say, I cannot bear it any longer. I must put an end to life. Why don't you move with it? Live with it. Find out about it. Listen to this. We have discovered several things. First, that to live with intelligence is the most important thing. To live a way of life which is supremely intelligent demands great alertness of mind and body, and we have destroyed the alertness of the body by unnatural ways of living. We are also destroying the mind, the brain, through conflict, constant repression, constant explosion and violence. So if one lives a way of life that is a negation of all this, then that life, that intelligence, when confronted with incurable disease, will act in the moment rightly. There is a man who has never committed suicide, although he is always threatening to do so, because he is completely lazy. He doesn't want to do a thing. He wants everybody to support him. Such a man has already committed suicide. The man who is obstinate, suspicious, greedy for power and position, has also inwardly committed suicide. He lives behind a wall of images. Any man who lives with an image of himself, of his environment, his ecology, his political power or religion, is already finished. Look at most people. They are living behind a wall. The wall of their knowledge, their desires, their ambitious drives. They are already in a state of neurosis, and that neurosis gives them a certain security, which is the security of suicide. Can a man live without any image, any pattern, any time sense? I don't mean living in such a way as not to care what will happen tomorrow or what happened yesterday. That is not living. There are those who say, take the present and make the best of it. That is also an act of despair. Really, one should not ask whether or not it is right to commit suicide. One should ask what brings about the state of mind that is without time. To live without time is really to have this sense of great love, because love is not of time. Love is not something that was or will be. To explore this and live with it is the real question. Whether to commit suicide or not is the question of a man who is already partially dead.